Really, we've only had this thing done for a couple of days in reality. Got it back to my friend who did the wiring. It was running. From there, I messed with the idle startup tune one time, and then I decided that I needed to take it apart. So I took the exhaust off of it and took it to another friend of mine who did this heat dissipation coating on all the exhaust for us, just to make the engine bay temperatures a little lower and also to make it quicker to cool off. So if you're at the racetrack and you need to work on it, it'll cool off a whole lot faster, all this exhaust will. So got that back yesterday. It's Tuesday, so got it back on a Monday. Monday night I took it home and put it all back together and started messing with the tune a little bit more. So I did another cold start then, and then I did another cold start this morning, and this morning I think I finally got it all ironed out. So I've been working on the drivability tune today a little bit, driving it to lunch, driving it back. I'm going to work on it a little bit more on my way to the house tonight, and I'm just trying to get everything as smooth as it can be before I really put it on the track or dyno it. I've also got to go in and figure out my two-step and my boost builder. I don't really know how much boost it's going to make on the two-step yet. So when we drag race, I need to know, what kind of boost it's going to make, so I'll know how it's going to launch. So that's something I'm still working on, and that's something that I haven't actually done yet. So that's another thing that I'm going to be trying to mess with this evening and later on this week. I'm not going to have it ready for street car takeover. 79 Malibu, so it's a G-body. It has a Gen 5 LT engine. It's a 5.3 out of a Chevrolet truck. I think it is a 2016 model, maybe. We have deleted the direct injection, so it doesn't have that. It's port injection only, using a Holley low ram base. It has one of our ultra low intercoolers on it. That one particularly is a test piece that we made, so it's not a completely 100% finished product, so it doesn't reflect what the finish looks like on a actual product that someone's going to get, but it was one of the first ones we did, and it's kind of a little bit of a blemished part. Perfect for prototype testing. I have another one of these with a different core in it, so we're looking at doing some things with our core, looking at changing a couple things around to boost efficiency, and that's something that we want to test before we do that. So that's kind of actually one of the reasons for this car anyway, was to do some intercooler testing. So what made sense to me was to do a turbo build, because I had a lot of parts laying around that I could make something out of. I had the Gen 5 engine already on a stand, because we've been doing cam development and things like that for years on these engines, doing piston to valve clearance checks and things like that, testing hardware, testing the fit of covers, etc., things like that. We've had this laying around, so I decided to use this engine, threw some head studs in it, gapped the rings, put it back together, and then built the hot side out of some stuff that we actually had laying around. I used to do a lot of fab work on the side, and I don't really do that anymore. So I had a lot of spare parts laying around, so I decided to throw a turbo system together, which works good. And it makes heat, so we can cool that air off and then do some intercooler testing. Everything under the hood I pretty much built, aside from the General Motors products that you see here, which is the engine itself. I mean, all the turbo system, the radiator, the shroud for the fans, all the coolant lines, all the plumbing, breather, overflow tank, all of that stuff is something that I made. One thing interesting on this is that I decided to run an E-gate on it instead of your traditional CO2 boost control style wastegate. Under there. And the reason I wanted to do that is because I wanted to learn about the E-gate. I wanted to learn what it was all about. I wanted to see how it took, or I wanted to see what it was like tuning it. I wanted to see how reactive and responsive it was. And on top of that, if you take the time to learn that, and you have an ECU, if you have the appropriate ECU that can control an E-gate, it's going to save you money versus doing CO2 anyway, because for the price of an E-gate versus the price of a CO2 capable wastegate plus your CO2 system parts and constantly refilling a CO2 bottle, it doesn't really make sense anymore to run CO2, in my opinion. So decided to do the E-gate on it, and went from there. A lot of this stuff, I bought this car as a roller, and a lot of this stuff was already on here, like the brake master cylinder. I definitely want to do something with that. That looks a little crummy. Some of this trimming back here was already done. I'm not really sure what went on there, why that was done. It had a small block in it with nitrous, so we took all that stuff out, and now it's, like I say, Gen 5 engine. It's got a Powerglide in it. It's got a Circle D torque converter in it currently, which is one of the brands that we sell. Highly recommend Circle D. They do an excellent job with their converters. And then, yeah, obviously everything pretty much that we have bolted on here, you know, forced induction turbo smart wastegate, blow-off valve, Power Master alternator, obviously our intercooler. It has a Tick Performance camshaft in it, a Tick Performance valve train, and obviously we sell all of those parts. The camshaft itself isn't actually a shelf cam that we have here. It is a rendition of the Stage 3 cam that we do have for these, for turbo applications. This particular camshaft I had for a project that I was going to do with this engine, with a twin turbo setup in my 3rd gen Camaro and a forged bottom end. I had the cam laying around, so rather than getting another cam off the shelf or buying another cam and just using money unnecessarily, I just took that camshaft and put it in this engine because it's close enough to work for what I'm doing, and ran with it. The water tank that's in the back that holds water for the intercooler, it's around 7 gallons. I actually had made it for my 3rd gen as well, and it fits in the rear tire, it fits in the spare tire well of an F-body. So over on the right hand side, if you're standing at the back of the car on the right hand side where the spare tire would have been, conveniently it fits in the spare tire well for this car also. So that's what I ended up doing, just making some different mounts and putting it in that same spot, because again, it's something that I already had laying around that I could repurpose for this project. It has a fuel cell, a 10-gallon fuel cell. It probably needs to be a little bigger because it's only 85, and I can't get very far on 10 gallons. Something else I'm trying to learn with this thing is how the temperature in the intercooler, how it all works. So I'll try to explain that as best I can. I have a temperature sensor in the charge pipe. That way I can know how hot the air is before it gets to the intercooler. Then I have 2 temperature sensors under the intercooler, so I can know how hot the air is under the intercooler, which is pretty common to have your IAT sensor under the intercooler because that's the temperature of the air that the engine's actually going to see. I have 2 in it so I can compare front to rear, and I can also guarantee myself that I have an accurate reading by having 2 sensors. And I also have water temperature sensors on the intercooler for the water going in and the water coming out. So how much actual heat from that air is being transferred into the water and being returned to the tank. And I've actually already learned something a little interesting on that, and that's how the temperature reacts. So how fast it takes the water in the front tank to start seeing a temperature rise versus the water that you know is returning to the same place that new water is coming from. And that's pretty interesting to me because I've made a couple of short pulls and I've made one minor pull in it so far, and it's pretty consistent that the temperature of the water going into the cooler doesn't really change much at all, which is interesting to me because I know that hot water is returning to the same spot. It'll be interesting to see what that looks like when it's going down track and it's wide open for 7 or 8 seconds, including your 2-step and stuff, to see what that actually looks like in normal conditions. But so far, 4 or 5 second pull, it's pretty neat to see that the water temperature doesn't really change that's going into the cooler. This car has a button on the shifter that can be used as the trans brake when it's sitting still. It can't be used as a trans brake in motion. In motion, it can actually be used as the scramble button. Something that's really cool though is if I have the trans brake on, he's got it set up to where my trans brake is here and the cruise control button is actually the bump function to creep the car into the staging beams. Yep, so this is my first experience tuning with the Fuel Tech system, and I'm actually pleasantly surprised. I came from Holley. Holley's the one that I've predominantly used, and it's very well thought out. It's very well laid out. Your functionalities are there, inputs and outputs are there, and overall so far I'm super happy with how simple it's been to pick up and run with it from a tuning standpoint. So I'm probably going to take this thing to some local tracks, some test and tunes, Thursday, Friday night stuff, to fill it out and see how it's going to run. Again, we're not too concerned with what kind of ET this car puts up. We're not too concerned with setting any records with it. This car is just a fun car and to test some things. So we're going to take it to some testing tunes and see what it can do. But if I do take this thing to some of the local tracks, I hope to see some of you guys there so you can check out the car, check out the work that we've done, and check out this intercooler that we've worked really hard on. If nothing else, I can always take it out and test it in Mexico. So there's another option.